Theo Goodman, welcome. How's the day been?
Good, good. I'm just tweeting out that we are live under the new link. It happens sometimes.
Yeah, I know. It was kind of weird on the UI. I tried to click record space on it, and it like started the space with recording, and it's a whole bunch of stuff.
Nice. Yeah. So yeah, thanks for having me on. I guess we'll wait for a few people to come. We already have some guests. Greetings, everybody. Really appreciate you coming. Thanks for having me on. Yeah, everyone tweet this out and so forth.
Yeah, I'm really excited I have a sheet of paper here with so many things written down. I went through your 0G interview, and you have done so much, and you were there really early in the counterparty community, especially with Rare Pepe, and really early experiments with sound, and I'm really excited to talk about it. But yeah, I mean, what do you think about this current memescape of somebody, the current sitting president putting up a meme coin and it getting almost top 10 in a few days?
Yeah, I think so. On one hand, I think it basically proves the point of what we've all been doing in a fucked up way, to be honest, because it's all just art. There's no utility in Trump coin. There's no blockchain technology innovation. There's none of that. It's just about the meme. It's just about the conceptual art behind it, and that's it. And it even has like fucked up rules with it too. The Trump coin does, but if you look back, I think that things like Dogecoin really set the groundwork for NFTs to exist, because it really showed, hey, it doesn't have to be about blockchain technology as a nerd out technology thing. It can be just something fun. And I think that really, there were other things happen for that, but that really proved a point, I think. I don't think people realize time, but that's part of the beauty of it. And I think this whole meme coin thing is essentially that. The other thing is, you'll notice that the basically the speed of everything really increases. So just the speed of things appear. I mean, if you thought like 2021 PFP market had a lot of coming and going of projects, well, the whole meme coin thing was, double, triple, or 10 times as fast, as far as the projects is even easier to produce and put out. But I think all of that together in a bucket is still related to NFTs in a way, because like I said, it's not about anything except fun. Okay, you could say it's about scamming or whatever. There was a really good meme that I retweeted. It had a symbol of Bitcoin, and it said, "Retards that think everybody else is a retard." Had a logo of Ethereum, and it said, "Poor retards." Had a logo of Solana, "Retards scamming other retards." It had a logo of Ripple. It said, "Retards." And I think that kind of sums it up.
I saw that meme. I saw that meme and stopped and looked at it, and I was like, yeah, this is definitely in the style of Theo. I that is There's something about Theo in your work and a lot of what you've done over the years that I think is like consistently commenting on like the bullshit in the scene, and I really fucking like respect that over the years. Like even just how you said blockchain technology, like there's a song in Basement that you did that quote, that's right, but we can get into that a little later. It's just always been funny to me. Let's start off with kind of like your introduction into like early crypto, and then how that led into like finding Counterparty, because that was a big part of some of your early experiments.
Sure. Well, we have to go back. I think you said you listened to the Zero interview. Um, so I'm still today. I still consider myself an anarchist. I mean, we can get into all like what that means, but that's just a whole nother. A long time, very interested in how can we live differently? How can we change things? How can we, do something? So there's a concept called dual power. And dual power is essentially the same thing as a parallel society. So dual power, and that's basically what we're doing in a way, or groups of people are doing. And I think, and so, for example, but pre-crypto, people that lived in communes, squats, or actually any kind of community group. Even I would even consider church dinners in some cases to be a kind of dual power building, because they're just kind of hanging out and you have a kind of vouch system for your reputation in that group, and it's outside of the state apparatus reputational system and everything. And so basically people can rely on these self-organized institutions instead of the state institution. So that's like very generalized what dual power is. And the theory is, eventually that can lead to, getting rid of the nation state system that we have through this kind of dual power. So it's not about necessarily overthrowing things by force. That could be an element of it, but it's more about building actual things. So given that background and how I and things I experienced and saw, like, okay, good and bad, this is good, this is um also, I think throughout, my grandparents, they grew up during the Depression, and so that trickled down to my parents. And so, always from a young age, things would happen. For example, May birthday or at a Christmas, I would be given a silver dollar, and they would say, "Hey, this is a real thing. This is something special. This is a big deal. You need to keep it." And so, from a young age, the whole idea of gold and silver, or these kind of these kind of things that have value, already were instilled. So I think that those were big influences on some, like, leading up to discovering Bitcoin. And then throw into the mix. My mom is an artist. She does oil paints and collages, and my her grandfather was a photographer for the New York Times and did a lot of, like, photos of presidents and did all black and white. So I had definitely a background in art, and at the same time a kind of background in um, you know, in some way about, like, gold. Oh yeah, like, also, like, lots of people in my family are like antique hunt. You know what I mean? Or my uncle is like a metal detector guy. He was in that for a while, like metal detecting stuff. So it's all in the realm of treasure hunting, looking for cool things, art, so you can see how that's basically what crypto is too. It is all of those things, but just in our time. So actually, just by so fast forward, um, I got into domain names, and discovered, okay, people trade these domain names. That's really interesting. So I just kind of jumped into that. Jumped into collecting and trying to sell the flip domain names, make little affiliate sites, things like that. And in their troll, and there's a forum called Name Pros, and I used to hang out in the chat there. And one day, someone was said something about Bitcoin, that it went up a lot, and that it was a scam probably, and they lost money or something like that. And so I looked into it, because I thought, well, what the hell is? Everyone's talking about. Let's just check it out. So I checked it out, and I also thought it was a scam after the first, like, day or so, but kept on looking into it. And I did a few faucets, which probably were, I don't know how much they were. They were pretty low faucets, but they were still, like, I mean, it was probably like $1 then, or not even $1, probably like a cent then. But still, it was, in base terms, it was significant. And for those of you that don't know, a faucet is a place that gives you actually free Bitcoin. Um, and just by chance, about a week or two after that, at the co-working space I was working, I looked on the calendar, and there was a Bitcoin meetup. And I said, well, what is that? And the organizer said, yeah, I know this guy, and he wants to start doing a meetup here. So I went to that meetup, and pretty much after that, I was pretty much, all in, totally interested in that. And I met some crazy people. I met, like, these, I had never really understood anarcho-capitalism, and I met one, like, real hardcore one in person. I had, like, when I lived in North Carolina, I had a neighbor that was libertarian, so it was like him, but weirder, kind of. I remember, like, the libertarian, he used to hire me to, like, do chores around his house and stuff, so I thought that was cool. I remember my mom said, oh yeah, that's so and so, he doesn't pay taxes, he's going to get in trouble, like. So I had, like, a weird libertarian contact. So a lot of that reminded me of him. And there was, like, a tech guy it was a real typical of people like you have now. It was like a real nerd tech people, a few political people. And so to me, it all made perfect sense. So that's backup story of me getting that. As far as Counterparty, damn, I don't remember the first place. I probably read it on Bitcoin Talk forum, but I don't remember exactly. Also, there was the podcast Let's Talk Bitcoin. I think that's probably where I heard it. And I was watching and maybe already contributing a little to a YouTube channel called World Crypto Network. And there was some interaction with Let's Talk Bitcoin or so on. And Let's Talk Bitcoin was a big Counterparty promoter of different things. And yeah, so as I do, I just try to figure out what it is. There was only Counter Wallet, and it was a real old version that's even clunkier than. And yeah, I just fooled around with it basically. So that's the basic intro.
You kind of mentioned your early introduction into crypto, and how you were influenced by these people buying and selling domain names. And you mentioned the Name Pros troll box. I'm interested is before you got into like Let's Talk Bitcoin, did you ever mess with that Poloniex troll box? Was that something you were aware of at the time? It's been brought up a couple of times.
Sure, definitely. I was in the Poloniex troll box some. Definitely. I know Robness was really big in there. But yeah, all of the exchanges back then had a troll box. And I think they should really bring that back if they have a really headache to moderate. But basically all of the troll boxes, all the exchanges had troll boxes. And from buy this now to, whatever trolling. Basically what you see on Twitter now were in those troll boxes. You also have to think this is pre-Telegram. So imagine each exchange having its own chat on its site itself. And those troll boxes were pretty important back then. Although Poloniex did exist when Telegram started. So that's also true. But I think they were more important pre-Discord and at the beginnings of Telegram.
I came around and saw that troll box, and it was an absolute shit show. And we'll get to it a little later, but like the Rare Pepe cards, some of them commemorated the mods on that Poloniex troll box. But before we get too much into Counterparty, and I kind of want to hear your take on Mastercoin, but before we get to that, I want to talk about your experiment you did with something called Sound Wallet 2014. Can you tell me a little bit about that? Because I think that was kind of remarkable and kind of where that came from.
Yeah, I bring that back. Where that came from is I also for years was into noise experimental music and did a lot myself. And through that, discovered people making short editions of records called lathe, which is, I believe, how Skrilla is doing his like short record run. So basically, a lathe. So when you make a pressed record, you cut a master, and then from that master, a negative is made, and then they stamp that negative to make the copies of the records. However, a lathe is just the machine. The record is actually each is cut individually, stamped. So each one is cut. And so what you can do is you can buy old antique record lathes, or if you have lots of money, new like ones that are studio quality that are used these stampers that I talked about. And then yeah, you can just cut your records essentially, one by one with different. So I got to that experimenting with that, and so I basically learned like how records work, and I thought, okay, that's cool. So I heard at a meetup someone scratched a private key into a copper bar, and I thought, well, that's pretty cool. And we had paper wallets, and I thought that, well, that's pretty cool too. And I looked at the paper wallet, and it had this string, private key string. And I thought, well, wait a minute. Okay, I know how to take an image and make a sound out of that. So I knew software that exists. So Aphex Twin and a lot of other artists have done weird things where they hid images into their sound. So I knew there was software out to figure that out. So I thought, well, why don't I just put a text of the private key into a sound and then send that off to a place that does these lathe cuts. And then, yeah, the private key is the sound. And want to get the private key, you have to play the record, and then you have to read the sound with a spectroscope, which in the meantime is just an app you can get very carefully, and then write down the private key and then import the private key. And back then there were only private key strings, not passwords, password phrases. So yeah, so that's the basic gist of it. That's what I did, and I made some, and I even sold some. I had people send me their private key, and I mean, which is kind of silly, but it's cool concept. And yeah, people asking about it, I need to get off my ass and make another kind of experiment with this. But that's the basic gist. I've made some cassette ones too. I think Skrilla has one, where the cassette ones I've done different concept. I just speak words. I just speak this phrase words on a cassette in my voice, and that's it. And then the private key is the sound. And that's a sound wallet.
Wait, explain that again. You speak words into, because you're taking the private key and then you're putting it into kind of a different format, so you can kind of save it on this disk. What is the words aspect of it?
So the cassette one. So all of this is not machine readable. So the whole it's a very obscure way. It's definitely not necessarily more, but it's definitely more obscure to hide your key. So the cassette one that I made, you could also do on a record, is you have your 12-word phrase, right? You're supposed to write down. Well, what if you just record a tape of you speaking those 12 words? And that's the concept. That's another concept of the sound wallet, is just to have the words spoken as a way to store your private key. Yeah. And then, you'd have the public address and you could send stuff to it. And if you ever wanted to get the private key, then you would just listen to the recording and then write down the words and then import the words. That's the basic concept of the sound wallet. And there's lots of cool. So if anyone wants to do a weird collaboration, get in touch. Maybe that's the best way to do it. And we can funky sound wallet art stuff.
So I think that sound wallet is a really big precursor to some experiments you did on Counterparty, which, in my opinion, I consider some of your early experiments on Counterparty to be like HNFTs, because you were experimenting with things that no one else had really tried. And without giving some overview into kind of early Counterparty, there was Let's Talk Bitcoin. I just talked a couple of days ago with Adam B. Levine, and that was a really eye-opening conversation. So you had this environment of a podcaster with Andreas Antonopoulos on Counterparty, and there was a lot of experiments going on at the time. I think Spells of Genesis was about to start. It was just about to start. But you did this experiment with base 64 data on a Counterparty token called Beep. Do you want to talk about that a little bit? Because I just find that idea fascinating.
Yeah. I think there's some broadcast maybe with the base 64 there somewhere, but I'd have to dig it up. But basically, okay, so again, it's commentary on things going on. So there's the concept of things being backed by something, and of course we know Bitcoin is not backed by tangible assets, or I guess you could argue minor, but you know what I mean. The basic rabbit hole discussion that happens. And it was the beginnings of talks about stable coins. They didn't exist then, but it was just kind of like rumblings about how to do it. And I thought, okay, what if we had a token, Beep, that is backed? Each token is backed by 1 second of sound, and each token represents a unique second of sound, or not even a second. And then that's what's backing that up. So that's the basic concept of Beep. And the base 64 files got really big. So I actually just was fucking around with a sound editor, probably SoundForge, And I figured out like the shortest sound is like a click, a click. You have like a click sound, 64 of it. It's long, but it's not that crazy. And then, you just, that was the concept. Each token is backed up by that little click. I couldn't really figure out exactly how to do it. What I wanted is you could redeem the Beep anytime you wanted and get the sound, but I didn't get that far. And and then of course, I'm still looking at laptop to have that fucking private key on it, but I haven't found it. So, that's the basic concept of Beep, that early experiment. And of course, as you did back then, I made an announcement thread, which in itself was also kind of a fun commentary on, that's how people launch things back then. What you did is if you were going to launch a shitcoin, which today we would call it meme coin, you went to Bitcoin Talk forum, you announced your intention that you're going to launch it, like a pre-announcement. And then you set a date for it, and then you said, okay, the blockchain of this all of their own blockchain is now launched, and here's how you mine it, and here's the software to mine it, basically. And so I just copied that thing and was like, okay, now I'm launching this thing. And so that in itself was, to me, a big deal that people even replied to the thread and were even interacting with it, because I think that showed the whole power of Counterparty and tokens in general, that you don't need to have your own blockchain. You can just do this token, and you can create a concept, and you can create things with it. And so that was, an early exercise. I didn't think that much of it. I was definitely experimenting in the sense, like, I don't know exactly how I'm going to do this, but I have some ideas. And that's the basic story of Beep.
I find it really interesting. I posted up a little bit to the Light Bright up top, the billboard in the space about Beep, and it in my timeline that goes over early HNFT experiments. It links to the Bitcoin Talk forums, and I wasn't around during the Bitcoin Talk forums, and that's like the centerpiece you just described, where people were launching coins. And you kind of see this meta, like nowadays, where people going back and trying to find Lucky Coin, or all these old blockchain kind of ideas. And my God, the Bitcoin Talk forums are just a gold mine of history to see. Rare Pepe started on there, Mike posted there, Counterparty started there. You see the original Bitcoin Talk forum post and going through the examples. But describe a little bit more about what the process was like. What's a broad, like, for people that don't know, like, what's a Counterparty broadcast? Was there a limit on how many characters you could do? Was that a reason why you kind of kept it at 1 second? And then this kind of like echo thing where you're proving through a transaction, and then you're going to get some sort of echo back. I'm just so you were so early.
I didn't know. I wasn't sure how I was going to do that. I think I was going to say, you just send it to me, and then I'll echo the 65 of the sound through a broadcast. Yes, there was a limit, but I don't know by heart how many bytes it was or characters. So that was a reason. I didn't even know. I just did trial and error to make until it worked. Until I figured out something could work. Would work. But yeah, that's the. What was that like? It was going through the Counterparty thread, Counterparty itself I think on Party IO back then, Forum 2. And it might have had a troll. I believe it had a troll box as well, which is just a chat on site. And yeah, you had people posting stuff. Actually, the Counterparty forum still exists. You can access it. I think the Counterparty IO.
They just recently archived it. Adam Karlenstein came back and archived it. Okay. But yeah,
damn,
it's all still there though. So, the data's still up.
Yeah. You can find really cool discussions, old ones about. So basically, just going through there, asking, or just reading stuff. Making the wallet, figuring out what this is. What is a token? What does this even mean? Asking. Yeah, I think people would even trade tokens then, just for fun, just to figure out what's going on. So that's basically that's kind of how it was like. Okay, you have to imagine. There's no MetaMask. No, this is the first. Like you mentioned, Mastercoin, that existed, but it wasn't really used that much. And so this is the first community experimenting with tokens. So definitely would say that. Mastercoin existed, but it was used maybe for some like ICOs before they were called ICOs, maybe. And that was about it at that time before Tether. And then when Tether, they launched on Mastercoin, which then got renamed to Omni, which still exists, but I don't think it's used that much. And yeah, so it was just people fooling around with tokens back then. A lot of the tokens were related to Let's Talk Coin. So not every podcast, a lot of the podcasts on Let's Talk Bitcoin would have a segment of the show, and they would say a key, like a password, and then I think you had to post on their forum, like the password, and your address and Counterparty address, and then you'd get the token, something like that, just basically to prove that you've been listening to the podcast. And so, there is like LTB coin token. Actually, that's right. I think LTB on Counterparty was even on Poloniex.
Oh yeah,
which is pretty.
Oh yeah, some of the early coins on Counterparty were traded on these centralized exchanges, and it was kind of like that early jumping off point for like, oh, you can make your own coin with these interesting applications. And when I talked with Adam, he mentioned, so yeah, there was a couple separate coins. There was, just because I learned this just like 2 days ago, that there was like coins for getting display on the Let's Talk Bitcoin podcast. There was incentives that if you wrote articles for Let's Talk Bitcoin, the website, that you would get LTB coin. And this was kind of like freely easy to trade. And like, also you're getting paid for like making content. I don't think it was much at the time, like $2, $3, you know. It started to get gamified. But that mention is that there was almost like a proof of listen. Adam mentioned that he didn't really know how many people were listening to the podcast, and he wanted to see kind of usage rates, but he also wanted to reward people that were actually listening. So he'd do this kind of I forgot what it was called, word of the day, or he explained it in some sort of, you know, expression, but you'd go to the Let's Talk Bitcoin website, do the sign message function that we all know now from like MetaMask and you know, ordinals wallets and etc. And then you could basically receive some reward for, you know, explaining that you paid attention. So anyway, I just wanted to, because I just learned that. It was a very interesting early way of like proof of listen, and then you get airdropped some sort of token that was worth that you could go sell.
Yeah, definitely. It was. And there was also, and there were a lot of different projects. What's the, now I lost the name of it. What's the mining for cancer
Folding coin.
research?
Yeah.
Folding coin was also listed on Poloniex and a few other exchanges. So yeah, you had, you know, counterparty projects listed. So, you know, and so that's like what a lot of the nostalgia, and I think a lot of the like, I guess you could call it is because people remember when exchanges would run counterparty, and then if they ran counterparty, then you could list all kinds of crazy stuff. And so now that's, for whatever reasons, you know, difficult now, or it's more difficult to do, and so on. But that could change anytime. And so that's definitely what it was like. And so these were all really new experiments. You had, and again, these were the first projects that didn't have their own blockchain, but were token-based projects that were listed at exchanges. So that was a new concept for people to grasp. And I still think the you know, secret word, you know, airdrop to people that are listening on the podcast somehow is still a good way to do some things. And I think people do it occasionally. You know, they say, I'm doing a spaces. If you listen, I'm dropping, you know, some tokens, or I'm dropping a Rare Pepe or whatever. And I think that's a really good use of tokens.
I cannot stress enough with the research I did with early counterparty history that some of these ideas that were successful then, I think will remain successful for a long time. One of those is that proof of listen, proof of content, and basically paying people for direct, you know, proof of real world. There was this like idea that because Bitcoin was backed on this idea of proof of work for, you know, mining, that I think that there's an ethos, a social ethos of proof of work in the real world that people kind of like latch on to that, and it's really successful. I'm interested in your early exposure. There's a funny thing. I heard it in Zero G where you talked about forking SOG in it looks like the Coin Dojo. And you had this idea to like, well, I want to do a Spells of Genesis type idea. Can you talk a little bit about that? And then the early experiments you saw Mike doing a little bit later after that.
Sure. Yeah. So that basically came from, damn it, I forgot his username, but Shaban from Spells of Genesis. I asked him. There was this French guy. So basically, Spells of Eversoft Dream, or hired a PR company, and I believe it was the first like crypto PR company that promoted ICOs and stuff. So really early, and most of the early Rare Pepe people were in this other chat called Coin Dojo, which was adjacent to this podcast called Bitcoin Uncensored. And so that was a really cool play. And so a lot of counterparty adjacent people were in there, and that was a lot of that's where a lot of all the people in there were all into calling out scams, doing debates about proof of stake, whatever. You know, it was range from hard trolling to like very high level conversations within 1 minute. So you can imagine that's the kind of play, that's what Coin Dojo was about. And the Everdry would come into all of the chats and say, hey, Spells of Genesis just launched a new card. Here's the press release. Check it out. And you know, you see in the cards, they partnered with different companies, like, and coins. They had, damn it, now I'm on this historical thing. I can't remember off the top of it. But you'll see in the cards, like, some of our companies or coins that Spells of Genesis kind of partnered with in a way and did a card about them. So the PR guy, the way that he posted it and the way that we just would started trolling him in Coin Dojo because it was just ridiculous, the style of promotion, you know? And he also would post this in the Counterparty Telegram. And so that led to, you know, we have the log. It's somewhere. I think I said, yeah, can we fork Spells of Genesis and make something called Legends of Shitcoins, LOS? And we were just like joking around about, yeah, you should have Vitalik card and Shitcoin card and some other things. And then I think 2 or 3 days later, Mike just came out in the Counterparty chat and was like, hey, I made this Rare Pepe, join this chat, and I'll give you one. I think basically that's just the basic gist of it. So it's just people hanging out, sharing ideas, and that's the whole, you know, so-called fork of Spells of Genesis. I was thinking that we needed to fork the Genesis game too. I didn't totally realize how it worked. That those were kind of separate. And you can earn tokens, but you don't need to fork the whole thing.
I find that interesting, though, that you're in this perspective of Spells of Genesis. They're creating a trading card game with cryptocurrency assets. It's picking up some steam, and then they're kind of making these art. They're incorporating other companies and other artists into making these art cards in Spells of Genesis that represented pretty serious things. I mean, and pretty historic things. Tatiana card is in Spells of Genesis. There's, like you said, companies that are represented in these early cards. And I find it interesting. You saw that and you said, well, I want to make legends of shitcoins and I want to make fun of things. And I think, I don't know, I find that really interesting and worthwhile that you're seeing that there's some sort of mimetic kind of contemporary ideas being put on these blockchain cards, and then you just wanted to kind of have fun with it. And Mike eventually goes and creates this collection called the Rare Pepe collection. He mints Rare Pepe, he mints a couple other cards, I guess we'd call them issue. Nowadays you call it mint, but in those days it was just issuing a token, right? And you ended up being the first artist that wasn't Mike to get your card approved in the collection, and that was Pepe Nation. And I find I find that whole idea really interesting, that instant transition from something pretty serious to something a little bit more troll and mimetic. And what was that process like? Did you just hit up Mike and say, hey, I made a token, it has this image I wanted into the, or was there a collection yet?
Basically, no, there was Coin Talk thread. And I think Mike was, this is all like happening in probably like 1 or 2 days. I think that Mike was probably talking asynchron to like me. Joe probably hit him up. Maybe Sean hit him up too. I don't know. And just kind of like talking to people in the Counterparty chat that were interacting with it. Like, okay, what do we do now? Like, we have this chat. Who's going to moderate it? What are we doing? And so I and I said, yeah, I want to make one, and I think I just made one, and then he kind of explained like how you add the image, and then I just did it. No, there was not like a big review process back then. Like this is like happening really fast. There's not. It's kind of like figuring this out as we go. He already had that. He already in like a week's time, I think, had the idea of making the directory and already basically launched it pretty quick. And that was yeah, so that was that. And then I talked to Joe on the side and he said, yeah, I already have this wallet thing. I'm just kind of reworking it to for the cards basically. So he already had a wallet Counterparty developed, but he just had to rework it to show images. And that was the beginnings of the Rare Pepe wallet. And then I made a chat for the Rare Pepe community. I said, well, we need to have like a mod chat kind of, for the chat, because it's going crazy. It's already going crazy. So we made and that just became the scientist. So it's just like people that I knew already from Coin Dojo. So they kind of formalized it, as formal as you want to call it. And then, in there we just brainstormed ideas off each other, like, oh yeah, we should do series like baseball cards, or oh yeah, that makes sense. And you know, and then like later, okay, you know, we have to have submissions. I think that happened pretty quick, you know. And some of it also, as you know, was in the same spirit of making fun of things, you know, like, sorry, submissions are you know, we're so busy with dealing with the blockchain, but maybe just nobody wanted to deal with all these DMs right then, you know. Just things like that, you know. So and that's how the whole science, you know, someone in the community made the scientist meme, and that's how the scientist name came about. Oh yeah, I think I made the at the beginning I Rare Pepe Foundation. So Rare Pepe Foundation, because there was the Bitcoin Foundation, so it was a direct, you know, making fun. And back then they were in shit anyway. Everyone kind of didn't like them, and was kind of making fun of the Bitcoin Foundation, and so the Bitcoin Foundation, Gavin, the Bitcoin developer Gavin, he was always called the chief scientist or chief Bitcoin scientist, which made him sound like chief of Bitcoin almost. It was kind of fucked up in a weird way. Hey, great developer, might not agree with all his things, and he's kind of stepped away in the meantime after the Craig White, right? But that's kind of how that all words got in the mix, is always from somehow getting in the mix from, you know, uh, memes, trolling, making fun. Also, I want to speak on the whole Pepe thing in general. Came from Telegram, definitely, in my opinion. You know, people are going to be like, Theo, that's not true. Like, Sposogenesis, this. Nobody hated Sposogenesis. It wasn't against Sposogenesis. Just want to get that straight. I've had people say, Theo, that's not true. Blah blah. I was like, no, just chill. Nothing like that. What I wanted to say is that in Telegram, the sticker packs had Pepe's. There were Pepe sticker packs, and then people started making custom sticker packs of Pepe's in different situations. And as you'll see on some of my cards, and maybe some of the others, I mean, the direct rip and me editing a Telegram sticker of Pepe at the desk with a computer. That's a Telegram sticker, but I've just changed. You know, I used that as a template, and then I just changed it. So that is, you know, definitely was super important for Rare Pepe to exist. Where, you know, the existence, you know, and just Pepe catching on in the, you know, Pepe caught on in the community, in my opinion, from sticker packs as answers to discussion in Telegram, and then the customization of them. So that's kind of, I think, when people joined Mike's room, that he made, the early Rare Pepe chat, you know, people, yeah, basically said, well, I want to make one. How do I make one? I think were some of the top questions. And so that's just how it started, basically.
I find that so incredibly interesting. There's a lot to unpack there that I think is super important. One is this idea of you're using these kind of keywords, Bitcoin Foundation. Then there was the Counterparty Foundation, which was kind of like, Zero G mentioned this to me before, and I always look back and I think Counterparty was this like love letter to Bitcoin. They wanted to do things the same way, Bitcoin improvement proposals, and then on Counterparty improvement proposals, et cetera, having open source GitHub. But you came in and said, and was influenced by Sposogenesis, said, well, I want to start making my own cards and such. I want to start making these own, you know, that would be awesome. And I think Pepe in general at that time, is just all around. People were making these Pepe memes of like, oh, super rare, don't share. And it was everywhere. It was, you know, places like Twitch, you know, 4chan, Telegram. And the fact that Telegram, you could make these own little Telegram stickers, it kind of makes sense, right? That people will like, oh, I want to make my own Pepe and put it on a card or put it on a token. And I just find that kind of evolution incredibly interesting. And I think that your examples in that first series, second series, I think set the example for like the rest of the collection. It sounds like, you know, you're just kind of doing funny stuff in the beginning, copying and pasting these little Telegram stickers, and then you put it on your card, add some, you know, attack values and speed values, and that didn't really, you know, they weren't used necessarily, maybe in the Rare Pepe party game, if that ever comes out. You know, we've been waiting many years for that. But I think you set an example, and you started doing this thing called green face. What was that? And I think I saw in the interview before you said, Joe, you know, just told me that's not a Pepe, it's just green face, so it doesn't count.
Yeah,
What was that all
that's
about?
great. That was basically about um, someone that you want to criticize or troll. You just make them into a Pepe by making them their face green. So, like Guru Pepe is what is his name? oh god, now I forgot his name. I'm on the interview and I forgot his name. A big Ethereum guy, and yeah, I made his face green, and it's actually a direct quote from something that he said on a Bitcoin Uncensored thread. Everything on that card is a quote from him, and I just found, and so he called back then on his Twitter profile. He said, "Resilience guru," so he calls himself a guru. So I always thought that's a little, that's thinking quite highly of yourself, calling yourself a guru. So I just thought it's a bit much. I know you talk. He talks a lot of game, and yeah, just he irked me in a lot of ways, and he irks a lot of people still to this day. And so I just thought, okay, that's a perfect green face card for that. Yeah, and I think that yeah, Joe. I remember Joe did say that once, like something like, "That's not even a Pepe; it's just some ugly green face." I thought, okay, and and so then on Kaiser Pepe, I made sure to add a Pepe on it. So Kaiser Pepe actually has a Pepe on it. It's not just green face or
That's
something like that.
well.
Yeah.
So there's this aspect of, okay, I'm gonna green face somebody that I kind of want to troll and I think is funny, Pepe Nation, Guru Pepe. But with Kaiser Pepe, were you trolling or do you kind of respect? I just kind of my interpretation of it. Yeah.
Kind of both. I mean, back then. Now I really don't like him in a lot of ways, but both, because I kind of think at back then he was more trolly, and I liked him a lot more because he was more wild. He yells and stuff, but he was on fucking Russia Today. That was wild in itself. He had a show on Russia Today, and he was like, yeah, Litecoin, it's going to hit $50. That's our price target. Interview, and then have really cool political people ran going off on gold bugs. It's like pretty fucking crazy shit. And so, yeah, both troll him and endure, in term of endearment too. I think both on the Kaiser Pepe, definitely. Yeah, and what does it say? Something like, gold real one. And if you really closely, somehow I even took the RT logo and really small and made it RP for Rare Pepe, which, and also ironically, R green. So I thought that was cool, and just, by coincidence. So yeah, that's the whole, some of the little tidbits of Kaiser Pepe.
I find that interesting. I maybe one day I'll ask you a little bit more what you think about, I mean, the Kaiser report, because it's a big part of the documentary I made in TimeLineXCP, because I'm trying to find any kind of reference to like mainstream media that somebody referenced Rare Pepes, and I think it was pretty historic that Stacey Herbert and Kaiser were in the Kaiser report talking about Counterparty and Rare Pepe, because that was a big, massive deal. I mean, Counterparty was, you look at Trump coin going on top of top 15, top whatever it's going to be. Counterparty was that at the time when this was all happening. It was a top 10 cryptocurrency. It was very talked about. It was somewhat early, but it was very popular. I just, for stress the people that don't know that, it was the place to be in a certain circumstance.
Yeah. Also, there's two things that happened. I think really got it on the Kaiser report. One of them being what you would call today a raid, which we just said, hey, everybody, tweet the Max Kaiser, Kaiser Pepe, and Rare Pepes. Just tweet at him nonstop. Reply Pepes to him and send him. People were sending him DMs. Hey, we'll send you one. Anything like that. And then parallel to there was an article that came out about Venezuelan artists. So then there was a big crisis in Venezuela. Venezuelan artists making Rare Pepe and being able to sell them to make money to like survive, basically. And those two things happened around the same time. And so once that article hit, that article got a lot of echo in. So then the rest of the crypto rags picked up that article and just ran a copy or their own version of story. And when that happened, then Kaiser Report was like, okay, I see that's a cool angle. And they ran their story, based on that premise too. So that was kind of what got it on. And that really helped Rare Pepe a lot, to be honest. The story mostly, the guys were some definitely too, but that story echoing really, once a story echoes like that and kind of catches on, you have to think. Back then, there was no other NFT stuff, so it spawned. Well, there was. Okay, excuse me. There was Spells of Genesis and other random things, but there was no NFT ecosystem like you have today. So it begged a lot of questions of people. Not only what the fuck Pepe, but what the fuck is this? And why are people buying it? And why do people care about it? So it just spawned a whole conversation about what are NFTs in general. Um, yeah, so that's the context of that.
Yeah, and NFTs wasn't even a word yet. We were just calling them tokens. There was variance in issuance. Some of them were 1 out of 1. Some of them were 1 out of 10 billion. Then they were kind of more of a meme coin. This early idea of
Yeah,
creating your own meme coin. I don't want to. I keep relating to this in some of the interviews. It was similar to the idea of Pump.Fun, like where you could kind of just see these new memes pop up on Counterparty and see these new cards coming into the Rare Pepe directory, but that was like kind of the first curated version of which memes get in. As the art dank enough is what they said. It had to be dank. That's what they wrote on the website. We can, I want to transfer a little bit over because you have a lot of background in studying politics, studying sociology in a way, and I know you like to play fun at all of that. But what did you think about kind of this early political memes? Did it relate to anything you saw earlier? Was it like, did you think it was kind of like blockchain graffiti, or was it kind of similar to people holding up memes or angry signs at a protest? I think you called them
yeah,
agitation props, and I, I
yeah.
find it so
I think
incredibly
I
interesting.
think
Yeah.
I think yes, I did definitely more like looking, but I think just like automatically it made sense. So it's not something you have to identify as like, oh, I'm making agitprop. Uh, Agitprop is just called it's just a word called agitation propaganda, which is basically all memes today. So that's been around for a while. Russia was really good at it back. So if you the original concept of agitation propaganda, or I guess if you like look on Wikipedia, is like there's like Russian communist artwork stuff. Some of it's really cool, but all kind of like graffiti, stenciling, things like that. So I definitely see parallel because of the access of it. That anyone. I mean, okay, it costs money, but it costs money to buy paint too. So it's easy to access, and yeah, you can see imagery of what you were saying. Commentary, social commentary about current events, whether that's in our ecosystem or about the world or anything of that. You can say, "Oh, Theo, that's social commentary. It's just troll." And that's totally social commentary. A lot of that is very, very relevant social commentary and actually cuts to the truth quite quicker and more succinct than anything else. That's pretty much why we're all here. So I definitely see parallels to that, and still today. And I think I don't know, the whole Trump coin thing is pretty wild. I think that just shows the power of it. Once you have the establishment saying, okay, we have to do a meme coin, then that is like, full circle. And I think that I'm still thinking about it, to be honest. I think that people, you know, people people see what's real and what's not. People see that. Well, eventually people will come to the real the real memes, the real art, and not fake memes. To us, like nice fake word in there. I think that's a generally good. However, people are not. The market is not logical. Um, but I think a lot of things are more about surviving. So, and I think that's the whole counterparty. What's so big about all of the counterparty stuff is that the amount of time it's survived. People say, "Oh, it's just old. That doesn't mean anything." Yeah, it does mean something because it survived and it's still being used. It's being used more than ever. No, it doesn't have the massive volumes of some other things, but that doesn't necessarily matter. It matters more that it's still alive after all this time. And you see, just think of the amount of Pump.Fun things that have come and gone in a second, or versus things that have been around 10 years. That's a completely different value proposition and a completely different artifact than things that come in so quickly. And with people need to kind of think about that, but I think people do, and they respect it, and and then they might get interested in it too. And on the other hand, I kind of think that Counterparty is kind of it kind of resembles a I don't know if you call it a witchcraft or ancient language, or like Jedi secret knowledge or something like that, samurai knowledge that's passed down to people, and it's not that it is easily accepted, but it's not spoon fed to you. So you have to do the work to do the counterparty things. That's just how it is. Not that people are not helpful. That's not what I mean. I just mean, in other places it's very spoon fed to you, like it would be like you're a consumer. Yeah. And in counterparty, it's not like that. You're not treated as a consumer. You're treated as another person that wants to do something. And so that's a completely different proposition. And I think, as I was in the part one, spoke briefly about dual power. That's what you need to create a situation of dual power. You need a environment, a parallel society or parallel societies that have vouching and reputation systems that can be informal. I don't mean like we give each other reputation points. Just I know who you are. I know what you've done. Be for whatever we settled to be. All these things. That's a reputation system. Or I will vouch for this person. This is a reputation system. Counterparty has all that. A lot of other communities don't have that because they're based on a company structure where there's a company that is treating you as a client. I'm not saying there's in itself anything wrong with that, but that's a complete proposition. And when you enter those communities, you're betting the lifespan community is hedged on the lifespan of that company. And most companies in crypto die slowly or quickly. And it doesn't mean that community could change and get, so-called community takeover or whatever, totally possible. But anyway, that's just a good positive thing that I see. The silver lining on Counterparty still being small, I think some of the reasons are what I said, is this kind of genuine treatment.
Yeah, I might ramble on this for a sec, but I find there's this like crescendo with Rare Pepe looking back at the history, because the early years there was these companies that would start Tokenly, Vend, and there was this idea of creating very serious company ideas of backing stock on top of tokens, or the experiments like we mentioned before with Adam B. Levine of rewarding users with some real world capital. I mean, we at the time just something that you could eventually sell to help your life. And then that morphed into this idea of it could make this art piece, and we're going to do this experiment of like, oh, you could probably sell this art piece, and now it's part of this curated collection under these scientists that have made sure it's something that they want to put up in the collection. And I just find that there's this kind of weird thesis that's happening. All of these branches of like technology and then community art are all coming together. And you have so many cards in Rare Pepe that do a lot of different things. I posted up Drop Pepe, kind of in relation to that kind of like political meme thing. Your people are starting to make not memes about the crypto space like you did with Pepe Nation and Guru Pepe, but now memes about just like general social things that are happening, presidents, celebrities, etc. And it's just so weird. It's a weird because like some of it is like, hey, I might make a meme that someone sees and like they're like, oh yeah, I used to play Mario Kart, so I want to buy that card, and so they might make money. But then there's like other people that are using it of like, hey, I want to make a commentary on the current space, and that's mimetic, and that might do better than Mario Kart Pepe or Rambo Pepe. And I just find that it's such an interesting crescendo to me, and I don't think it's really talked about enough, and I don't think it's really I don't think people see how interesting that value was. And now, when you can't judge the space looking back how it is now, because now you can just go, you upload an image into an ordinal, and boom, it's done. In those days, you kind of mentioned there was a more deep process. You kind of had to learn how to use a Bitcoin wallet. Then you kind of had to learn how to use Counter Wallet and put this description in, and then you got to go upload your image somewhere else. Then you got to burn, Pepe Cash by sending it to this address, and then you got to wait, make sure that these art curators have accepted it, and it was, I think it was really, it was exciting for me. I came in way later. I got a card in the collection way later, but again, I just kind of was so influenced by these early cards that were making kind of statements, and it was all wrapped around a meme of Pepe. You did a lot more experiments too. You did some experiments with linked content, especially in Pepe Nation. Can you talk a little bit about those experiments of linking content in cards, how that worked with Rare Pepe Wallet, this kind of token access control? Is if you own the token, then you get access to something even cooler or something more interesting, and it might add value to the token itself too.
Yeah, well, basically when Skrilla made DJ Pepe, actually I remember before he made it, he was talking to me about it in DM, and I said, "Oh yeah, that's music NFT. That's not going to work because anyone can listen to it. I've thought about it. I don't know how to do it." And he's like, "Oh, it's going to be cool." So it ended up working. And then I think he basically just asked Joe, "Hey Joe, can you add this button on my card, and it will access a private SoundCloud link?" And he did that, and then I said, "Hey Joe, I want to do that too." So I did that retroacted on Pepe Nation. So it's a music NFT, and then I started doing it with a bunch. So Drop Pepe is a music NFT too. It has a song with it. Let's see what else. Damn, now that I'm on here, I forgot. Anyway, a lot of my cards have extra content.
What was that content like? Without giving away, I'm sure, I don't know if you want people to, you got to go out and get the card first.
Yeah, you got to get it. They're about 1-minute songs by me. And I forgot the name of an app. It was an app that I had. I think it was called like Rap Song or something. And what it did is you could talk into the app and then select a beat, and then it would kind of cut up what you said to put it on beat and do some auto tune sometimes and put it on the song. So, and you could also rap at the same time the song was playing, but I didn't find that as cool. So basically, I was talking into this black box without listening to the beat, but knowing the style of the beat, and I would say things like blockchain and Rare Pepe and Pepe Nation and things like that, and then it would put that on the beat. And when I got one that I liked, I saved it, and then I put it on SoundCloud and linked it, and that's basically how I linked. So all of them are produced in this completely, probably I'm being all copyrighted or have no permission to do it kind of thing, which I thought that was cool too. And I guess it's just like a precursor to some of these AI song things people are doing now, basically, where I don't know if you can use your voice with them too, but it was like a similar vibe to that. So yeah, that's the basics. So there's some hidden songs. I need to probably release them like on some limited vinyl or something. That would be cool. And yeah, I still think music, and Kane just released this ordinals thing that's pretty insane. I still have to wrap my head around it. But I still think music NFTs have a future. I don't know what the future is. Maybe it's more like the Kane thing. I think it's just a matter of figuring out, or if it's, like more like my concept, like really short things, like one cowbell sound, boing, and every boing, bing, bong, and every one of those is a different. And you say, "Hey man, look, I collected this bing," or if it's a whole song, or both, could be both. We have to just see how it is. I'm still also figuring out how could I do, a stand-up NFT. I mean, of course, it could upload a video. Cool. Seems kind of basic though. I just, or is it even really needed? Does it work? I still don't know. I think it just needs to be more experimented with, figure it out. Maybe what was when I was talking to people? What was it? The punchline on the image, and then at block height XYZ, oh no, you have the setup, and the punchline is revealed somehow automatically at block height XYZ, and it just like appears on the card in text. It's like another weird.
That is interesting. This experimentation with now using the protocol level rules of Bitcoin and block height and releasing something that verifiably released in the future. That's interesting too. I think a lot of these early experiments are considerably underrated, and through your story too of experimenting with beep, experimenting with sounds, then okay, I want to make this community card and this curated collect network kind of memetics and politics, but I want to go even farther, and now I'm seeing people starting to link even more, bonus content to these cards, and that's 2016. That's, my God, Theo, that's almost 8-9 years ago when this stuff was being experimented with, and that you could do these experimental token access control things, these mimetic cards that you just kind of minted with this art on top. I think that's just massively underrated, underappreciated, and not talked about. There's might be many reasons for it, but that's why we're here today to talk about it, because I just,
Yeah,
you know,
I
um,
I think it's basically also about it's part of the same reason that I said before. It's that everybody has to promote their own stuff or the community or whatever holders or whatever, and it's not, there's no drop Pepe marketing plan. There's no like massive, how are we going to engage KOLs for drop Pepe or any of them really. I mean, there might be some weird behind the scenes things on a small level, but basically there's not. So, and the general mass of people are used to learning about things, or I even say consuming, or just bumping into things in that way. So Gen X, like me, is like digging in the crates. People are not doing that now, not really. But it doesn't mean that they won't, and it doesn't mean that hey, I could promote Drop Pepe for like the next 3 months only and completely show the hell out of it. Who knows? I have no idea. But that would, even then, if I did that in my funny, ironic way, that would still be completely different to the top down marketing that we're bombarded with on a daily basis in the whole crypto sphere. Which so maybe that just needs to happen more.
yeah, maybe. And the marketing in those days, again, I just think it's important for people when they look back to not compare what you had, the tooling and the marketing you have now. I don't think crypto Twitter was kind of that big at that time. I mean, cryptocurrency was still pretty much of a niche. And but the marketing, I remember at the time that, and you mentioned this before, and just some things prior of Bitcoin talk forums. And then if you made a Pepe, the only marketing you'd do is you'd go into the Pepe chat and be like, hey, you'd post the picture of the Pepe, right? Or you'd pull it up on the little that showed the picture. And that was it. I mean, there was no, you didn't know. You didn't have a marketing budget. You just kind of had your art and you
Not
hoped that
really.
other people, yeah.
I mean, that's how Rare Pepe News got started. I think I like maybe paid someone Pepe Cash to like write an article once or something. Just community initiatives. But Rare Pepe News got started because there was no one really writing about this stuff, so he just started, making a news site about it. So that's yeah, but like you said, agree. It's just the proportional size of the entire ecosystem was so much smaller, so it's kind of you have to view it from that lens as well.
Of course, of course. I have another experiment that happened kind of while Rare Pepe was going on that I saw you did. And there was this early thesis of kind of not only just making companies on Counterparty or making memes or trading cards or trading card games, but there was this thesis of kind of betting and using the blockchain to have this like ironclad way to see who bet for what and how it got distributed, on the other end of it. And there were some early experiments with like fantasy football teams with Joe Looney. FFL Team A
Yeah,
is the token. But you did an experiment for the Super Bowl that was these two tokens called SUPERBOWLFAL to represent the Falcons and SUPERBOWLPAT to represent the Patriots. What was that
yeah,
idea? How did that go about? And you used Pepe Cash, if I remember correctly, in that
yeah,
experiment as well.
yeah. So there was a betting function in Counterparty, but it kind of got taken away, or it doesn't work, or it's not in the wallet. So, and it was kind of lanky. But Super Bowl was coming. I think, yeah, I just ran the idea by Joe and the others. So, well, what if? Okay, this is what I'll do. Actually, I'll admit this is another thing that was going on in the Counterpart, the Pepe Cat chat. It was so funny. I was doing sports booking in Pepe Cash in the chat. So I would say, hey, does anyone have a game they want on? Message me, and I'll do the bet, and you can do the bet in Pepe Cash. and I would quote them the odds, and then pay them out. And it was just trust. It was just, it was no blockchain Oracle things. It was just on a trust base. I was doing that, and so then that, yeah, definitely let Super Bowl was coming. I thought, okay, what if you just make, I wrote it in the description. I forgot how much it was, but I said every, every Super Bowl Falcon card pays 1,000 Pepe cash if they win, and every Patriot one also pays 1,000 if they win. And so what I did is then just set sell orders according to the odds. So that means that if the Patriots were the favorites, so let's say it cost 700 Pepe cash, 700 Pepe cash to buy a Patriot, and it cost, I don't know, 500 to buy a Falcon. Just as an example. So that means that you'd only spend 500 to get 1,000. So they're the underdog, and then for the favorite, you'd have to spend 700 to win 1,000. And then at the end of the match, I just would put buy orders for all of the exact amount of tokens sold for 1,000 Pepe cash each of the winning team, and I wouldn't put any buy orders of the losing team. And that's the basic gist of how that worked, and it worked. And okay, and huge credit to Joe. Joe adjusted Rare Pepe wallet so that the like week of the Super Bowl you could already, and it had a Pepe Falcon card and a Pepe Patriot card, and you could do the same thing. You'd flip it over and you'd press a button and you could buy or trade or send those cards. So it made it easy to interface with the cards, and people did it. And as the thesis was, hey, this is cool. During the game, you could trade them, basically doing live bets on the open market with other people that are willing to do it, and people did that. So historically, what happened was the Falcons were ahead by like 21 points or more at halftime, and some people bought Patriot tokens for really cheap on the open market, and then the Patriots ended up winning. And so people actually did this. Okay, in today's terms, it was a low amount, but just the fact that it was thrown together, it worked. And that was the basic concept of that.
That's like right now, because and I'm going against my thesis of kind of comparing what you did to modern things. That was like the first experimentation, at least on Counterparty that I know of like poly market, of this idea that you could trade it while it's happening.
Sure.
You're kind of using a token to represent yes or no of who wins. And then now you have these on-chain orders that, no one can take down. No one, I mean, and people, you get, again, you said you relied on the trust of you a little bit. You tried to, say, hey, I'm going to put it in the description. I'm going to describe the rules and such. But a significant amount of the functionality of that entire thing was done, quote unquote, on-chain, on Counterparty, using these immutable transactions on top of Bitcoin. I find that incredibly groundbreaking. There were some experiments done before, but you did a successful one, and then you successfully, paid out the people that won. And
yeah,
that's incredible. That's not known about. People don't know that Counterparty was experimenting with that. And this is all meanwhile while people are experimenting with Rare Pepe and experimenting with Spells of Genesis. And there's just all these web branches that branch out from Counterparty at the time of all these different things. And I find that super interesting. I think eventually people will look back at those tokens and really think that they might be worth something for historical value, especially just to the idea that Polymarket was, or the idea for it was kind of experimented with this Rare Pepe artist on top of Counterparty, which was somewhat seen as a, Rare Pepe specifically this kind of counterculture aspect. But I don't think that should be ignored. I think that's just so groundbreaking. I guess I'm jumping back here. I want to talk about the 3-frame GIFs in Rare Pepe. The first, from my research, the first GIF was UFO Pepe, and it was really simple GIF. It had about 3 frames, and I want to ask you kind of about it's up there on the light bright one back to Eggplant Pepe, and how you somehow fit this GIF into this tiny little amount of bytes that you could use, and this tiny little amount of, I think the card dimensions were 480 by, I don't know, 20, or I forgot exactly, but just tiny, and kind of experimenting not only now with just with images, but now with these moving GIFs. And I think like I don't think anyone was doing that just yet.
Well, so basically, so you'll see different things that happened. Uh, so, for example, I don't remember the first low issuance card, but basically there was like someone made some low issuance cards, and then people went crazy, like, oh, I'm going to do like an edgy low issuance card like, for low issuance. Then Pepe Cash took off, and then people said, oh, I'm going to do mega high, like extremely high issuance, like billion cards. And the same thing happened when UFO Pepe came out. I was like, oh, we could do a GIF. Fuck, why don't we do everyone do GIFs? Then everyone started GIFs. Not everyone, but a lot of people started doing GIFs, me included. I was like, oh, why didn't I fucking think of that before? Of course, I can have a moving image. That's pretty nice. I think still today I use gifmaker.com. I think that's the name of it. That's a really cool site, and you can do a lot with it to do things. And the again I like appropriation kind of stuff, so I did some Google searches and somehow stumbled upon this GIF with the little eggplants already on it, and I forgot the guy's name, but he's jumping on the seat of a late night show and doing thrusting his hips, and it already had like the little eggplants going on there, and so I gave him a green face, and then I took, I believe, 3 snapshots of the original GIF. So the original GIF is way that I appropriated is way more detailed in the things, but I actually just took 3 and then made a GIF out of it. So I just, using snipping tool, when the GIF is playing, I just actually snap and then snap and then snap until it, do some trial and error until it looks cool. And so then that gives you that cool, like weird, lanky, glitchy kind of thing. And also I liked um, the slightly different size of some of my snips made the whole card kind of move, sort of. And so I just kept it, and I started using that as a technique to make the cards kind of move, sort of, by making the snaps that each size is a little bit off on each part of the GIF.
That is, and then that would have a lot of people would kind of take these examples of series 1, series 2, and kind of build upon this idea of a GIF or a moving image, and you have this would come in and do kind of entire animations later.
Yeah.
I don't know how. I think it was Tomopen, right? With that just did these incredible detailed high res animations later. So we're at this time where people are experimenting with Rare Pepes. They might go for $2, $10. Maybe the rare ones go for 50 in the early days, and everyone was like, "That's ridiculous, right? That's too much." But you started an auction house, and I think you started to see early on that, man, these are pretty scarce, right? And these are, yeah, they might be low priced now, but I think people might want to bid on some of these. They're kind of difficult to get. Some of the artists don't put their cards up for sale, etc. How did your NFT, I don't think it was called that in the beginning because NFT, it wasn't a word, but your auction house, tell me about how that started and what that looked like.
So so basically what happened is people in the chat. So of course there was the counterparty decks, and besides that, the way to get cards would be to OTC deal, to trade, or to give away. And it's a little bit cumbersome to use the decks. So a lot of times people would just say, "Hey, I have made this card. I want to trade for something." They would come to the chat, and people would, make offers, and they'd do a trade. And I think one day someone did that, and 2 people wanted the same one right away, and they said, "Oh, okay, well, I bid, $1," and the other person said, "Well, I bid $2," and they said, "Okay, we'll have an auction." And I said, "Hold on there, that was cool. I'll do an auction tomorrow. Everybody DM me what you want to auction, and I'll run the auction." And then the next day I did it, and I ran the auction. And the first auctions were actually, the bidding was in Counterparty XCP, and it was just in the Rare Pepe chat itself. and then I would do them like every week or every weeks or so, just in the Rare Pepe chat. And that's basically how the auction started. And I think it really helped, just liquidity, moving things around, finding price discovery, having a lot of fun, with it. And some of them we did, ritualistic burns to Keck before the auction. Um, yeah, so those were the basic, that's how it got started. I had never auctioneered, but I had been to auctions with things, and I really liked them, and I knew how they should be run by being at them. So I just made really strict rules. Like at the auction, I said, no, no bullshit chatting, no shill bids. Everything is considered a bit, basic rules like for a real auction. And we did it. We ran that thing, and it was a lot of fun. And it's part of the whole lore. I think auctions, live auctions in general, are definitely part of the whole Rare Pepe lore.
Absolutely. And to this day, you still run that auction house to this day, right? I'm not
Yeah,
sure.
I haven't been doing so many lately, but yeah, I'm still doing auctions here and there. And then eventually, like years later, I think at the beginning of 2021 or the end of 2020, I did my own chat NFT auctions, and have been doing auctions in there since, because people were asking me. They said, "Hey, why don't you do? We need another auction. We need an auction. We want an auction." So, you know, now we have scarcity online auctions. It's where I love the auctions, but they don't have the live auction vibe, and it's a lot more work in the background than you think to pull off. That's one reason for it. The like kind of, but maybe I should relaunch it, revive it a bit. Let's say do some mega auction, but yeah, that's how that got started.
Yeah. And you mentioned earlier, like when you kind of first got into Bitcoin, you went to these events, these live in-person events. In my experience of crypto, I never really thought about meeting all these people in real life. But you, from the early days, have been super active on going to real events. And the reason I bring this up is because you've curated auctions before. I've seen you live, run auctions at a NFT Paris, which was the Pepe's in Paris event. And there's footage of you at the Rare AF conference in 2018, but I'm just going to name off just a couple. I'm sure there's more of how many events you've been to and spoke at. CoinFest UK, NFT Rome, Unchained 2018, Proof of Work Summit, Transylvania Crypto Conference, Crypto Bridge Frankfurt 2018, and then this, I'm sure there's more, but the Rare AF conference in 2018, I was looking through the footage, and it was funny because I had met you when I went to Pepe's in Paris, and I was looking at this footage of them auctioning the Homer Pepe in 2018, which is a 1 out of 1. It's specifically, an NFT, right? It's not some meme coin. It's a 1 out of 1. And there's people there like Dada and CryptoPunks in 2018. You guys did this little get together, and I hear you in the background while people are auctioning, and you're like, "It's Homer." You were hyping up this auction, and I just laughed out loud when I heard that. I was like, I know that voice. And can you talk a little bit about kind of in-person events and you were at that 2018 Rare AF conference is kind of, I think, looking back, considered one of the first NFT conferences. It brought together Ethereum, Counterparty, Bitcoin people, and it was pretty successful from what I hear. Tell me about how that went.
Yeah, it was really cool. Definitely was the first one to bring the different communities together. It was pretty wild. It was I think it was the first time a lot of people met each other in person. Um, Basically, the first NFT event probably. So it was you had people curious about what the hell is going on from more traditional art or auction houses or things like that, going there, and they were kind of had looks of shock or like, what the hell is this? And a lot of other really enthusiastic people that knew they were onto something and didn't know what exactly, and were you know figuring things out. So that was really cool. Yeah, I was at that auction. I didn't do auctioneering, but that was pretty weird. And yeah, I was drinking back then, so I was very loud there, hyping that auction up. I mean, I was bidding on it, but I got outbid on the Homer Pepe, and that was pretty wild. Yeah, I mean, I like speaking. I've spoken at a lot of events. Um, been taking kind of a break lately, but yeah, I like speaking, and I thought, and when Rare Pepe came out, people would there would be an event, and maybe near me, or that I'm going to anyway, and it's just be like, hey, I want to give me a slot, and I would just talk about rare pepes basically, or about NFTs, or whatever you want to call them. And but that was really weird back then to to have any talk about that. Most of the talks were complete garbage and very boring and about utility, blockchain, yada yada. Mostly that kind of like serious stuff, you know. And yeah, I thought it was a good idea to bring some kind of fun element to the event, basically, you know. So
And that was
so
like
yeah.
politically hated on at the time because Rare Pepe was a hate symbol.
Also,
Yeah, and were you getting a lot of judgments at the time for talking about what now I consider personally just like this culmination of community art, worldwide art curation? But at the time you're trying to talk about it, people are just calling you names because they think that you're something you're not because it just has a green frog on it.
I didn't have a lot of people to my face call me names ever, to be honest. Uh, I think that definitely a lot of people didn't take it seriously, and then 1 year, 2 year, or 5 years later, might come to me like, Theo, that thing you were talking about, NFTs, that's actually a real thing now. Um, that's definitely happened. Yeah, I think that even it being Pepe on top of it being NFT, and that being a weird value proposition for most people back then, even still today, uh, compounded it. But actually, that was perfect. Needed to be, um, it needed to be that. It needed to be something radically in your face and telling the truth. If I had presented NFTs in a way that was blockchainy, and oh, I'm solving like 10 problems that you don't that are not even problems, no, who gives a fuck? So I think it was actually perfect.
And again, I just can't stress enough how much I actually really respect your commentary on people taking some things too seriously or trying to lie that this technology is something that it wasn't, you know. And I find it interesting that that some of the most successful things that we look back on now wasn't that, you know, all these companies trying to be the next big thing or solve some sort of, you know, problem weren't really successful. But what was these mimetic artifacts of art and experimentation, music, etc. That is just I just really think that in 5-10 years people are going to look back and go, what did this all start, and what really happened in those early days? And to have a conference in 28, have a collection start in 2016 and then have a conference 2 years later, that was kind of like, there wasn't, that's kind of uncommon, right? Usually you have like a company that's going to market something and try to get as many people to buy it. And nowadays it's KOLs and apparently presidents that are starting meme coins now. So I I find that incredibly interesting. There's only, I don't want to keep you here for too long. Knowing me, I could probably
Yeah.
just ask you about 1,000 different things. But you did some experiments in Basement, which was, you kept doing music on Counterparty. Basement's a little bit more recent, a couple years ago, where you could do these little tracks, and I could hear your memetics in the song. The song's called "That's Right," and it's similar to those early songs you put on Drop Pepe and Pepe Nation of blockchain technology, and you did this
Yeah.
funny little beat to it. I'm gonna find it. I'm gonna post it up top. Like, I have to, because it's so interesting. But I also saw that just makes sense to me that you kept going with this art and doing these experiments and different collections in different ways. But you got a little bit involved with the developing side through a counterparty improvement proposal, or just a kind of general proposal of locking description.
Yeah.
I kind of want to pick your brain on that, because I think you were one of the earlier people to at least kind of go into the GitHub and document, like, maybe we should do that. And it just got implemented with Adam Krellenstein, and
Nice.
it's some. I don't know if are you aware it just got implemented protocol level?
I didn't, not that it just, but I'm aware, like in the summer, meeting Adam, and like I think he like mentioned that it's like gonna happen really soon. So that's cool. Yeah, I mean, it's something that people criticized in some ways, even though it's a cool feature that you can update the description. And yeah, I just thought it would be logical. Why not just have it optional? You can lock, just like you can lock issuance. Can't you lock description? And uh, I'm not a good enough coder, but I was trying to find. I actually was trying to find, but I was unable. I was thinking, okay, let me find the code for a lock description. copy, paste in Notepad. Now let me find the part, lock issuance, the exact code. Now let me find the code where you lock issuance. Okay. Now connect that to lock and just cut and paste it and move it around. Boom. That's Theo's development style. But I think it wasn't that complicated. There might be other things that I don't understand or don't know about that made it not as easy as I said, but it might have been that easy. It's just a matter of organizing the code and so on. But yeah, I thought that's a cool feature. Why not have this feature where you can say, "Hey, the description is locked forever." That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was one of the first things, like when I started messing around with Counterparty, because each description, when it's updated, it's shown as an issuance, and it has information of each issuance. And it made sense in those days. You wanted to update the description for various things. You had experimentation with Kaleidoscope by Nathan Sonic. I had an interview with him yesterday talking about updating the Kaleidoscope asset with different kind of layers of art. And nowadays there's this kind of permanence idea of ordinals, and I think like Skrill has been really experimenting with it with some of his recent works of making a counterparty asset, but then a description links to an ordinal, and that seems kind of to quote unquote lock the image on chain. And I don't think any wallets really offer it yet. I think it's kind of more at a node protocol level because it's kind of early. But lock description might be interesting. I think there might be. It's weird that like even changes in the recent days are going to affect maybe the value or philosophy of these old Rare Pepe cards. Of like, hey, did you lock the description? And in the early days, you had this thing called token issuance ownership, where the power to even change the description is in that kind of code level area, and people were starting to like send this token issuance ownership to like burn addresses to lock the token kind of manually. But I just found that interesting and find that remarkable that I think it was talked about in the community, but you went and did the work of, I'm going to go to GitHub, I'm going to try to go through the code, I'm going to look at it and see.
Yeah, but everyone can do it. But the most work I did was, I'll tell you how to do it. I went to an existing counterparty CIP. I copied the whole thing, and then I just edited it with what I wanted to do, and then I posted it. That's basically what you need to do. Do you see what I mean? Like, I just it just has a certain structure to it, and then you post it in the forum. That's pretty much, or maybe I did a GitHub pull or something, but that's basically all you have to do. And so it wasn't as hard as you think. So I think that it's important that so-called non-technical people can do this, or actually you should learn how to do that. You should, even if you don't think of yourself as a developer, you should try to go through that process of even doing a proposal like that and just see what it's like. Because it's one of these like ancient Jedi skill witchcraft things that we should all learn how to do.
I completely agree. I didn't really even know about Counterparty GitHub or Counterparty improvement proposals or the discussions that happened in there until way later. And I started to read them and find them really interesting, because some of these new proposals might, build entire ecosystems. You never really know. And it's Counterparty is so like, it's not like other chains. It's not like you're going to the Bitcoin GitHub and you just kind of look stupid for being like, when this, or could we do that? And it's a lot more open source. And I think that's a big thesis of Counterparty. And it's a beautiful thing that it's still alive versus these other kind of companies that came in and said we're going to do it our own way. And I think we're lucky to have some sort of meta protocol that has all of this art and history on top of it, and you can be a part of the process no matter how technical you are, just to identify that, hey, maybe this feature would be cool as a user, or can we talk about it? And I just wish, when I got involved, I kind of realized how little people got involved. I just kind of wanted to show up and buy Pepes and make some money. But there's a lot more experimentation going on, not only with artists and what you've done in, this, what we call 8 historic NFTs, but with, it's cool that you got involved with that kind of side of things. And then one of your ideas you published is now like a part of the protocol and might be experimented with in the future. That's incredible. And should be noted.
Now, I think we should wrap up. So now I can. Yeah. So I think if it's accepted, I can say that I'm a counterparty developer.
Maybe so, yeah. Well, before you go, is there anything you wanna like chill to talk about? You've done some really cool recent stuff. Ugly Lines, one of my favorites. But you want to talk about what you're doing now?
Sure. Yeah. Even I think last year I did a bunch of stuff on Ethereum. I did sections because not that I don't love Counterparty, not at all, but I asked myself, what's the most hated chain, or like that people don't really care about right now? And I thought Ethereum, and I kind of still think that. With everybody on Ethereum using L2s, not many people are using main chain. I think that's funny. And ordinals is cool. Nothing against ordinals at all, and I have done some. I probably will fool around with that again, but I don't know. There's just something about it, like that it bugs people. I kind of like that, and then doing my kind of art on that, it kind of fits to the whole context of it for now. So I probably will release something else on Ethereum. Yeah, so I have Ugly Lines, Elite Color, and Shapes. That's Shapes with a Z at the end on Ethereum that I released last year. Check those out, or ask me. No, but I'm probably post about them here and there. Yeah. Another thing is I'm also involved with the project nym.com. It's a privacy project, but it's not a privacy coin. It's without doing a whole nother space, basically a very private VPN that also has a mixnet. So just check it out. Right now it's free. It's an actual VPN that works. That's free for now. And so check that out, Nym. I want to show that. And I'm doing comedy. So if you need comedy at your event, then book. I have done comedy at different Rare Pepe events, including Beeple Studios, where I also roasted him a little bit. So definitely check that out. I think that could be something we could explore to lively up some of our event. It could be. I did a whole little. I got Kane to do his first stand up ever. He was really good. It was really awesome. So yeah. So that's one of the things I'm really busy with. I'm doing comedy, 4 or 5 times a week. So I'm really honing my skills on that. That's something I'm real passionate about. And yeah, that's what I'm up to.
Well, I'm excited for that. I got to hear some of your jokes as they were being written in Paris, and then I got to see you do a set in New York City at the last NFT NYC. It was the Fake Rare event, and I also got to see that performance by Kane Mayfield, and he killed it, man. I think he really does have a talent, and I think I don't know if he wants to pursue that, but I think he could if he wanted to, and I think you've gotten way more advanced with your jokes, and a lot like I remember you're talking about jokes in Paris, and I'm like, that's not a good one, but then 2 later I'm like, that's hilarious. write that one down. But anyway, I just I kind of wait to the end of the space to kind of show what I'm doing here. Theo Goodman is a massive part of historic NFT history, and Counterparty is too. And I did a massive timeline project. It's called TIMELINEXCP, and I did a bunch of research on an interactive infographic that legit lives on the token, and it's free to look at. All the information is backed on a GitHub, so I don't know if something happens and the link gets broken, it's still accessible through a GitHub repo, which is pretty ironclad at this time, and I think it will be in the future. And I also included a short documentary. It's about 18 minutes long that goes over the first 5 years of Counterparty. And Theo Goodman is in the documentary. A bunch of footage from that Rare AF festival is in there. And again, the documentary, free to watch. Like it lives, quote unquote, on the token. And I'm just doing a little bit of a sale for it. So if you are interested in buying the token, which is a part of the Fake Rare curated collection, it basically gives you some cool limited edition physical assets, and it goes towards more research, more interviews like this, and just refining this history, because I just don't see anybody else really studying this at the moment. So a sale of that goes a long way, and like a really long way. It would help me a lot right now. And I'm going to be presenting this at an event called The Counterparty that's hosted by Tatiana Moroz. She minted Tatiana Coin, and she's just an incredible musician, and she's planned a bunch of events, and there's some really cool. We're going to be there, like some really well-known people. I'm really excited for it. The guy who made the Alex Jones video game is going to be there, Theo. So that'll be interesting to talk to him. But anyway, that's my shill for kind of going through this history, and I'm glad that everyone came out. Shout out Arwin and Dr. Scratch, Zero G, Nathan's here. You guys, thanks so much for showing up and listening. And Theo, I think I'm going to take some of this interview, and I'm going to do some little content for it. It might take me maybe a month or so to do. But I just want to thank you again for coming out here and talking about your history, because I think it's very, very interesting. The story needs to be told.
Thanks, everybody. Thanks so much for having me. Talk to you guys soon.
Yep. Cheers. Thanks for coming by. Tomorrow I'm going to do an interview with JP Jansen. Not many interviews have been done. And he's regarded as maybe one of the first to do a 1-out-of-1 locked NFT with on-chain data through a broadcast of Olga. And this was in 2014. So you talk about people saying, you know, first NFT was here or this or that. And I think there's arguments for Namecoin, and I don't really want to argue it right now. But I think despite all of those arguments, for someone to have the kind of thought to put art on chain and then represent it with a locked 1-out-of-1 token, it wasn't even called NFTs at the time. Nobody really put a name to it. So I'm really excited for that. So check that out tomorrow. I think we're going to all learn some new stuff together. But anyway, thanks for coming out, guys. And I hope you enjoyed it. And I'll see you tomorrow.